Did the historic bandit Black Bart meet his maker between Reno and Virginia City? Welcome back to another edition of the Reno You Know. I'm your host, Steve, and whether you're a new viewer or a returning subscriber, I sure appreciate this time that we get to spend together. What we're going to do today is take an alternative route up to Virginia City from Reno, the original old wagon road, and I've wanted to take this old wagon road for 25 years, and I finally get the opportunity to do it today. I've known about the old Geiger Grade for about as long as I've lived in Reno, and I think it was about 1996 where I first came to this location where this old grade starts to wind its way up the mountains towards Virginia City. And at that point I found a locked gate and no trespassing signs, and I thought, well, that's the end of that. And well, that was the end of that for many years until recently when I started reading about this old grade once again. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think I read that someone either purchased some property or otherwise made this road available for the general public to go up and down. In the early days when Nevada was still a territory, there wasn't a lot of money sitting around to properly create the amenities of society, including serviceable roads, so the territory awarded contracts to individuals and groups to construct toll roads, and there were a lot of toll roads in early Nevada. In November of 1861, the same year that the Civil War started, the contract to construct a toll road between the Truckee Meadows, the future site of Reno, and Virginia City was awarded by the Nevada Territory to Dr. Davison M. Geiger, who was a local Reno physician, and John Tilton. Construction lasted almost 2 years, and Geiger and Tilton's toll road was opened in 1863, 5 years before the founding of Reno. The old grade that you're about to see was in service from 1863, right in the middle of the Civil War, until 1936, when Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal program made it possible to build a more modern road, the road that we see in use today, Nevada 341. And while there's been improvements over the years, it's still the 1936 route that we take today from Reno to Virginia City. And with all of its twists and turns, it's a fun motorcycle road, and all the bikers that come to our area every September for the Street Vibrations motorcycle rally, they really dig it. All right, we're gonna need four-wheel drive vehicles to get up this old wagon road, and I'm luckily have a friend of mine, Steve Knight, with me to kind of help guide me along, because I've never been up this road before. Good to see you, Steve. And you've been the past president of the California and Nevada chapter of the California Trails Association, and board member. You're on the board of the National OCTA, and also on the board of Trails West. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. So you have been up this road, right?
Numerous times for really almost the last 40, 50 years.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's constantly eroding and evolving because of the constant storms, and it's not really maintained.
Yeah, it's not a standard road by any means.
Yeah, it's becoming a side-by-side road.
Yeah, an adventure road.
Yeah.
Cool. So as I understand it, there's some great views to be had up there, but what I'm really interested in is finding a location called Robber's Roost or Dead Man's Curve.
Yeah.
And as I understand, the road is really twisty and windy up there,
right.
And when the wagon teams would get to one of these twisty spots, they would have to slow down, and that would be easy pickings for the highwaymen and the robbers and bandits.
Yeah, and this is stagecoaches ran here all day long, back and forth. Teamsters ran all day long, and they'd have to pull over while others pass. It's only one lane, even back then. And when they're pulling, they really are going slow, as you'll see. And when you have to go around some of these 70-degree or 890-degree turns, they're almost at a dead stop. And they're easy picking. Somebody can be hiding in the bush and just pop out and say, hand it over.
Hand over, throw down the box.
Throw down the box. In fact, Wells Fargo started bolting down the boxes, and that's one of the things that led to Black Bart to getting caught down in Copperopolis. They bolt down the box, and he'd never encountered that before. And they said, throw down the box. He goes,
let's jump in and head up the old wagon road. I'm so excited to see this.
yeah,
Let's do it.
commute problems.
Yeah. Commuting issues. Hello, horse. This was a gnarly road back then, and it still is today, but for different reasons. Back then, the teamsters, the freight wagons and such had to deal with snow and ice and landslides and wind, not to mention the nefarious highwaymen. And regardless, they still got thousands of passengers up and down this road both ways. Millions of dollars in gold ore and silver ore that was ultimately bound for points east and west, first by wagon, and then when the Transcontinental Railroad rolled through the Reno area in 1868, then they started to load the trains with those goods. So can you imagine being on this road way back when?
I can't imagine it. Any of these rolled roads, and they were almost more rutted than now, because you've got the wagon tracks, and they're not very wide, and even the freight wagon wheels aren't more than about 5 or 6 inches wide, and they're dragging them, and they can't use a long string of horses. As Steve will show you, when they go around these turns, if you've got horses around the corner, he's going to pull the freight wagon into the hillside.
Right.
So it's tough. They can't get too heavy.
One fact that fascinates me about the old Geiger Grade is that it has an interesting connection to railroading. In my humble opinion, one of Northern Nevada's great gifts to the history of the country was the queen of the short lines, the Virginia and Truckee Railroad. There's just nothing cooler about our history than this now legendary railroad that was conceived to get ore, supplies, and passengers out of Virginia City starting in 1869. Ultimately, it ran down from Virginia City to Carson City, and from there it went south to Minden and north up to Reno to meet the Central Pacific Railroad.
Real quick before we go further, I just wanted to mention my new merchandise shop. I spent the last couple of days putting together designs for t-shirts and hats and mugs and custom prints and that kind of thing with my kiddo Spencer. So please help support the channel. I'll leave the link to the merch shop in the description of this video. Thank you.
You can marvel and just stand in awe of some of these remarkably preserved pieces of 19th century engineering at the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City, at the Comstock History Museum in Virginia City, and the California State Railroad Museum in Old Sacramento. From 1869 until 1950, when the V&T went out of service, 27 different engines were put into service, each one being numbered from 1 to 27, and most of them having a name connected to the area, like the Virginia, the Inyo, the Reno, the Tahoe, Genoa, Dayton, and others.
So here's the connection to Geiger Grade. Back in 1869, before the Virginia and Truckee had laid rails to Reno, 2 engines were ordered from back east from the Baldwin Locomotive Works, number 4, the Virginia, and engine number 5. But engines number 4 and 5 needed to get up to Virginia City. And if you could put 2 and 2 together, those engines were hauled up this grade. After partially being disassembled, they had to haul 2 Virginia and Truckee engines up this grade from Reno to Virginia City. Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine?
I can't imagine it. I mean, I got a railroad car in my backyard, and that was 60,000 pounds getting it there. I can't imagine a caboose. I can't imagine 100,000. That's 50 tons hauling up there, because it's in parts.
Yeah.
But they
still.
were hauling mining equipment up here, flywheels that were 10 tons and multiple pieces. And if you ever see some of the old pictures in Virginia City with the stuff that's still down in some of those mines, the big pumps, Cornish pumps and stuff, I can't figure out how they did that.
Yeah.
And they didn't come from here. They came from California over Hennis Pass.
Right. So they had to go across the
yeah.
Sierra Nevada first.
Yeah.
Then this.
It's beyond me how they did that. But
Tough people and tough animals.
Yeah, and tough times. I mean, if
Yeah.
you didn't do this, you didn't work.
Right.
You didn't work, you didn't get paid. You know, so it was tough. And
They had motivation.
they had motivation, and some people had money. I mean, you have investors investing in these mines to pay for this equipment and stuff. And then you've got the entrepreneurs with the stagecoaches and the freight wagons. And those guys are got to keep moving or they're not making money.
Right.
And as soon as they finish delivering, they're headed back down this grade in the snow and ice, trying to stop that thing, which is more like a sled than a wagon on the way down.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine that. They actually cut trees and drag it behind with the branches facing backwards to slow them down.
Just for drag, huh?
Yeah. Just,
All right, hey, if you're enjoying this content, please think about subscribing. And also, please click that little like button. The YouTube algorithm loves it when you click the little like button. Your subscription to our channel just helps me grow this channel, which means better content for you down the road. Thank you.
now, where would you hide if you were going to rob a stagecoach?
I would probably hide around here.
I would.
Yeah.
I mean, where we were there, you've got steep cliffs. You'd have to go left or right, downhill or uphill. They'd catch up with you, and it's too steep.
Yeah.
Here is kind of the switchback. It's level. You could hide in the trees all around here. You could go straight in front of Steve and I. That goes up to Virginia City. The road to our right goes up to Virginia City. That's the continuing of the toll road. To our left is going back down. You've got 3, 4, 5 ways you could go hide and escape. Black Bart, if he ever was actually up here and got killed up here, he was out without a horse. He always hid in the trees and escaped on foot, so he didn't leave a lot to be found. And if you're going to escape on foot, this is pretty good, and you could hide. It's hard to hide you and a horse.
Yeah, and it's not marked on any of the old maps that we've looked at which curve is actually Dead Man's Curve or Robber's Roost. But
Right.
from your description and the topography here and the way this curves around, I'm going to think this is probably what they call Dead Man's Curve, just like you say.
Just who was Black Bart? Charles Bowles was known in his lifetime as a gentleman robber, and he purportedly carried out at least 28 stagecoach robberies in Northern California and Southern Oregon in the 1870s and 1880s. His reputation was enhanced by the fact that he left poems at the scene of 2 of his crimes. He had a fear of horses and would always travel to his crime scenes on foot. He wore a long duster and used flour sacks with holes cut out for his eyes as a disguise.
Charles Bowles, aka Black Bart, lived a very colorful life. He was actually born in England and immigrated to the United States, to New York, when he was 2 years old. And as a young man in 1849, he came across the country with gold fever like the rest of the gold rushers, seeking his fortune. He didn't find it and he gave up, went back east, and after news started filtering back east of the sensational finds of the gold rush, he came back out again in 1852, didn't get rich, and eventually did return back east. And he, in 1862, enlisted in the Union Army, and he served in the Civil War. Am I right?
Yeah, he served in the Civil War, and he was quite successful. He was badly wounded at the Battle of Vicksburg, but he was promoted twice from a first lieutenant, second lieutenant, and that's quite an achievement. And,
Yeah.
and served honorably and got an honorable discharge.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know. The guy is enigma in his wanderings around and his accomplishments.
Absolutely.
There is a list of all the documented stagecoach robberies he committed, and I've made up a map and dropped a pin at the approximate locations of several of these so we can get a general idea of where he operated. He was finally tracked down after making the mistake of leaving behind a handkerchief with laundry markings on it at his last known heist. He confessed and was convicted and sent off to San Quentin in 1884. He was released in 1888 on good behavior, and his last known sighting was in that same year. He essentially disappears at this point, and no one knows for sure what his final days looked like.
There have been several theories put forth as to the actual demise of Black Bart. One was that he became a pharmacist and operated in Marysville, California, and is buried there. Another has him buried in Knights Landing, California. And a researcher or an investigator from back in the day, when all this was happening, thought that he had even fled to Japan. And interestingly, several people have put forth the notion, the idea, and the theory that Black Bart met his end here on the old Geiger Grade. And here's what happened with that. In 1888, the same year that he was last seen alive in California, a stage was coming down the old Geiger Grade, probably around this curve, or one very similar to it. And a man jumped out of the bushes with the flour sack over his head and had a shotgun, but also the driver had a shotgun. And this was not this bandit's best day. The driver blew him away, just took out the bandit with one shot and dragged his body off to the side of the road and continued on his way. And once he got down to Reno, they were coming from Virginia City down to Reno. Once he got to Reno, he reported all this, and the authorities made their way back up here and found the body, and they made the judgment that the homicide was justified, and they didn't feel the need to drag or remove the body back up to Virginia City. So the report is that they buried the bandit somewhere on the side of the road. And the reason that we think this might have been Black Bart is that a couple gentlemen that were on the scene had seen photographs of what Black Bart looked like in the newspapers, and they claimed that the lifeless corpse by the side of the road kind of looked like Black Bart.
Although no one knows for sure, it is possible that Charles Bowles, who was in declining health at that time, wanted that one more shot of adrenaline of carrying out another successful heist, and he almost certainly needed the money. He could have selected this location outside of his normal operating area to throw off the authorities. We don't know, and probably never will, until someone is able to exhume a body and look at the DNA.
So to put a button on all of this, somewhere here on the side of the road, regardless if it was Black Bart or not, still lies the body of that bandit who met his untimely end in probably the summer of 1888.
I think it's more important we think it's Black Bart. It adds to the aura of this area. This is Virginia City, and lots of neat things happen here.
I'm in total agreement. The romantic in me agrees, and so we're going to say it was him.
I agree. Right over there.
All right, thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you learned a little bit about our really cool old toll road, old Geiger Grade. Was it Black Bart up there? I'm hoping it was. And we're finishing up this episode here at the Red Dog Saloon up in Virginia City. And this is a great place for live music. My band played here several years ago. And when I get the band back together, we'll have to do that again sometime. And today I'm enjoying an Alaskan amber made up in Alaska. Of course, I actually visited the brewery several years ago, and if I can dig out a photograph of that visit, I'll share it with you up online here. And since I wanted to give a shout out to another really cool YouTube channel, since we talk a lot about history here on the Reno, please check out History Hunters on YouTube. This is a really cool channel run by some cool people named Jeff and Sarah, and they do a lot of stories in Central California, where I believe they're located, but they also do a lot of things out of the area. So please check out History Hunters and subscribe and tell them Steve sent you. And that is about all I have for you today. I got to get working on my next episode. So until next time, as Harold S. Smith Sr. of Harold's Club always said, I'm with you. Cheers.